On the 11th of May, 2025, Pope Leo XIV marked an important moment in the life of the Catholic Church by unsealing the papal apartment in the Apostolic Palace. This act was performed immediately after the Regina Caeli prayer, a key Marian liturgy prayed during the Easter season. The timing of the unsealing was no mere coincidence, it symbolized the connection between the spiritual authority of the Pope and his administrative duties, reinforcing the unity of his mission. This ceremonial act, witnessed by millions of Catholics worldwide, not only signaled the end of the sede vacante period but also highlighted the central role of prayer and worship in the life of the Pope. In this report, we will explore the significance of this act, delving into how it connects to the Pope's spiritual leadership, historical tradition, and the ongoing continuity of the Church. Number 1. Marks the end of the sede vacante period. The sede vacante, a vacant seat, period is a defining moment in the history of the Catholic Church that occurs when the papacy is vacant, usually following the death of a pope. This transitional period can be one of uncertainty and anticipation, as the Church and the faithful await the election of a new pope. During this time, various protocols are followed to ensure that the absence of the pope is properly recognized and respected. One of the most symbolic and significant of these procedures is the sealing of the papal apartment in the Apostolic Palace. The sealing of the papal apartment is more than just a symbolic gesture, it is a clear and official indication that the papacy is vacant. The apartment, which serves as the personal residence and office of the Pope, becomes a place of silence and waiting during the sede vacante period. The ritual of sealing the papal apartment serves multiple functions, including the protection of the Pope's personal space and belongings, ensuring confidentiality, and preserving the sacredness of the office. In essence, it is a recognition that the office of the Pope is empty, and the Church is in a period of transition. This period of transition can be a time of reflection for the Church, as it contemplates the loss of a Pope and the anticipation of a new leader. The faithful worldwide begin to focus on the future leadership of the Church and the election of the new Pope. In the case of Pope Francis' death, the sealing of the apartment on the afternoon of April 21 symbolized the start of the sede vacante period, a moment of transition and mourning for the Church. The unsealing of the papal apartment, however, signals the end of this transitional phase. This marks the conclusion of the sede vacante period, which had been in effect since the death of Pope Francis. The unsealing of the apartment is not just a procedural act but a powerful statement that the period of waiting and vacancy is over. It marks the end of uncertainty and prepares the Church for the official recognition of the new Pope, Pope Leo XIV. The unsealing of the apartment is closely tied to the start of the new papacy, which becomes evident in the symbolism and significance attached to this action. It represents the formal acknowledgement that the papacy has passed into new hands, and the Church is now ready to move forward with fresh leadership. Pope Leo XIV's papacy begins with this unsealing, a powerful visual affirmation that the leadership of the Church has shifted, and the new pontificate has officially begun. It's important to note that the unsealing of the papal apartment is not a mere administrative action but a deeply symbolic one. It signifies the continuation of the papacy, which has an unbroken line of succession dating back to St. Peter. This is an essential feature of the Catholic Church, and the unsealing of the apartment serves as a visual manifestation of this continuity. The new papacy is not an interruption in this long tradition, but rather a continuation of a process that has been unfolding for over 2,000 years. The moment of unsealing is a profound reminder that the papacy is an office that transcends the individual pope. While each pope brings their own personality, vision, and leadership to the role, the office itself remains constant and unchanging. The unsealing of the papal apartment is an affirmation of this continuity, signaling that the Church is prepared to move forward in faith, guided by the new leader, Pope Leo XIV. In this way, the unsealing of the papal apartment does more than signal the start of a new papacy. It also marks the end of a period of uncertainty and the restoration of stability and leadership within the Church. The faithful are now able to focus their attention on the future under the leadership of the new Pope, and the Church can move forward with confidence in its leadership and mission. The sede vacante period, with all its rituals and waiting, has now officially ended, and a new chapter in the life of the Catholic Church has begun. 2. A symbol of continuity in the Church. The Catholic Church has one of the longest and most enduring traditions in history, and one of its key elements is the unbroken line of papal succession. For nearly 2 millennia, the Church has been led by a series of popes who, despite their individual differences, have been united in their commitment to maintaining the core mission of the Church, spreading the message of Christ. This succession of papal leadership, passed down through the generations, is one of the defining features of the Catholic Church. The unsealing of the papal apartment, when a new pope ascends to the throne of St. Peter, serves as a powerful symbol of this continuity, reaffirming the presence of an enduring institution that is deeply rooted in tradition. The act of removing the seals from the papal apartment is far more than a technical or procedural move, it is an event laden with symbolic significance. When Pope Leo XIV ascended to the papacy, the unsealing marked the formal and public acknowledgement of his leadership, a new chapter in the history of the Church that was connected to a centuries-old lineage. The unsealing itself is a visible confirmation that the papacy continues as a direct link in an unbroken chain of leaders. It is a concrete reminder to the faithful that the Church is not simply dependent on any one individual pope but rather is part of a larger divine plan that has withstood the test of time. Papal succession is not just about the physical transition from one pope to another, it is about the passing of spiritual and ecclesial authority. Each pope, in accepting the office, inherits not only the administrative responsibilities of the papacy but also the spiritual authority that has been passed down from St. Peter, the first pope, through every subsequent pope. This act of succession is often viewed as the guidance of the Holy Spirit, ensuring that the authority of the Church remains intact despite the personal differences, challenges, and changes of each individual pontificate. The reopening of the papal apartment under Pope Leo XIV is a reminder of this divine continuity, which connects the faithful of today with the early Church and with Christ himself. This continuity is of vital importance to the Church, particularly in moments of transition, such as the end of a pontificate and the beginning of a new one. During these times, when the Church faces uncertainty and change, the removal of the seals from the papal apartment sends a clear message that the institution of the papacy endures. The act of unsealing the apartment, in essence, demonstrates that the Church has not lost its way, even as one pope gives way to another. It is a reassurance to the faithful that, regardless of who sits on the throne of St. Peter, the mission and authority of the Church remain unshaken. The symbolism of papal succession also highlights the unity of the Church. While individual popes may bring their own personalities, perspectives, and priorities to the role, they are united in their ultimate responsibility to serve the Church and its mission. This unity is embodied in the continuity of the papacy itself. The unsealing of the papal apartment marks the restoration of that unity, a sign that, though one chapter has closed, another is ready to begin, and the Church will continue to move forward under the leadership of its new pope. This sense of continuity is especially important for the Church as an institution that transcends time and geography. The papacy is not a fleeting leadership role but an enduring institution that serves as a foundation for the spiritual life of millions of Catholics worldwide. The fact that the papacy has existed continuously for nearly 2,000 years is a testament to its resilience and its ability to adapt to changing times, while remaining true to its core mission. The unsealing of the papal apartment also underscores the significance of the papacy as an office that is larger than any individual. While each pope is unique and brings their own leadership style, the institution of the papacy remains unchanged, a constant beacon of spiritual guidance and authority. This continuity gives Catholics a sense of stability, even in the face of challenges and transitions. Furthermore, the reopening of the papal apartment marks the end of the sede vacante period, during which the Church was in a state of transition following the death of Pope Francis. During this time, the faithful were left waiting and praying for the election of a new pope. The unsealing of the apartment signals the end of that period of uncertainty and the beginning of a new phase for the Church, one that is rooted in the unbroken succession of papal leadership. By unsealing the papal apartment, Pope Leo XIV is not only assuming the responsibilities of the papacy but also affirming the unbroken line of papal succession that stretches back to St. Peter. This continuity ensures that the Church remains faithful to its mission, a mission that is rooted in the teachings of Christ and the authority passed down from one pope to the next. The removal of the seals from the papal apartment is, therefore, a powerful symbol of this continuity, underscoring the Church's commitment to its divine purpose and its steadfastness in preserving the faith for future generations. The unsealing of the papal apartment is a momentous event in the life of the Church. It serves as a visible confirmation that the Church's mission and authority remain unbroken, despite the passing of individual popes. It highlights the continuity of the papacy and reaffirms the Church's commitment to its divine mission, passed down from St. Peter to each successive pope. This act symbolizes the endurance of the Catholic Church as an institution that remains anchored in its faith and in the teachings of Christ. Number 3. Reinforces the authority of the new pope. The papal apartment, located within the Apostolic Palace, is not just a place where the Pope resides, it is one of the most powerful symbols of authority within the Catholic Church. The reopening of the papal apartment after a new pope assumes office is an act of profound significance, one that goes beyond simple administrative function. For Pope Leo XIV, reopening the apartment after his election was not just a resumption of his residence, it was a definitive declaration of his legitimate authority as the Bishop of Rome and Supreme Pontiff of the Catholic Church. At the heart of Catholicism lies a deeply hierarchical structure where the Pope is the ultimate spiritual authority, guiding the faithful and leading the Church with both doctrinal and pastoral authority. The papal apartment stands as the official seat from which the Pope governs and exercises his role as leader of the worldwide Catholic community. In this way, the act of reopening the papal residence is an external affirmation of the Pope's internal authority. When Pope Leo XIV reopened the papal apartment, the Church and the world witnessed a clear and visible demonstration of the transfer of power and leadership. In the Catholic tradition, the Pope is the direct successor to St. Peter, and his role encompasses both spiritual and administrative responsibilities. As the Bishop of Rome, the Pope is tasked with shepherding the faithful, ensuring the integrity of Church doctrine, and guiding the Church through times of peace and conflict. By unsealing the apartment, Pope Leo XIV was not merely taking up residence in a physical space, but he was assuming the mantle of leadership, both spiritually and administratively. The papal apartment, sealed immediately after the death of a pope, is a visible reminder that no individual can hold the office of the pope without legitimate authority. When the seals are removed, it signifies that the papacy is no longer vacant, and a new leader has assumed the position with the authority to carry out all the duties and responsibilities that come with it. The reopening of the apartment was therefore a physical confirmation that Pope Leo XIV had now been entrusted with the sacred office of Pope and had the right to lead the Catholic Church in all matters, from the most doctrinal to the most practical. This ceremony is not only symbolic, it also carries with it immense theological and canonical implications. Canon law, which governs the practices and procedures of the Catholic Church, stipulates that the Pope is the supreme authority on earth when it comes to matters of faith and governance within the Church. When Pope Leo XIV took possession of the papal apartment, he took full responsibility for the governance of the Church, ensuring the continuity of papal authority in accordance with Church laws and traditions. His legitimacy was not only confirmed by the physical act of reopening the apartment but also by the prayers, the canonical processes, and the rites that marked his election. Furthermore, reopening the papal apartment underscores the unbroken succession of papal authority that defines the Catholic Church. Each new pope inherits the authority and duties of those who came before him. In reopening the apartment, Pope Leo XIV affirmed his place in this sacred lineage. His actions were a statement that the papacy is not a transient or elective position, rather, it is a divinely ordained office that continues through the centuries, guided by the Holy Spirit, and remains the bedrock of the Catholic faith. The act of reopening the papal apartment also reminds the Catholic faithful of the spiritual dimension of the papacy. While many of the Pope's actions are visible and administrative, they are always grounded in his sacred role as the Vicar of Christ on earth. His authority is not merely political or institutional but is, first and foremost, spiritual. By taking up residence in the papal apartment, Pope Leo XIV was also assuming the responsibility of being the spiritual leader of over 1.3 billion Catholics worldwide. This includes offering guidance on matters of faith, maintaining the integrity of Church teachings, and setting an example of moral leadership. This moment is significant because it reinforces the Pope's role as the central figure in the life of the Church. The unsealing of the apartment signifies that the Pope is now the living embodiment of the Church's authority on earth. He is entrusted not only with the care of the global Catholic community but also with the spiritual health of all who seek guidance from the Church. As the Bishop of Rome, Pope Leo XIV is the direct successor to St. Peter, and as such, he holds the keys to the Church's governance, which include not just the day-to-day operations but also the safeguarding of its teachings and the preservation of its unity. Moreover, reopening the papal apartment is a reminder that the Pope's authority is not only derived from the institution of the papacy but is deeply rooted in his relationship with God and his role as the spiritual leader of the Church. His authority is divinely sanctioned, and his actions as Pope are seen as the continuation of Christ's mission on earth. Pope Leo XIV, by reopening the apartment, was affirming his role as God's representative on earth, and this act set the stage for his leadership in the years to come. In the broader context, the reopening of the papal apartment also sends a message to the wider world, both Catholic and non-Catholic, about the stability and authority of the Church. In a time when religious authority can sometimes be challenged or questioned, the act of reopening the papal residence is a reminder of the Church's enduring presence and unshakable foundation in history. Number 4. Follows ancient protocols of Church tradition. The sealing and unsealing of the papal apartment in the Vatican are rituals that are deeply rooted in the Church's ancient traditions, signifying the transition of power and maintaining the sacred integrity of the papacy. These protocols, while administrative in nature, carry significant theological and historical weight, and they are carefully followed to protect papal property, ensure the security of confidential documents, and preserve the continuity of the Church's symbolic leadership. One of the primary reasons for the sealing of the papal apartment is to safeguard the physical integrity of the papacy. The papal apartment is not merely a residence but a complex that houses significant, sacred items, including religious relics, important liturgical objects, personal documents, and files that are central to the daily functioning of the papacy. The Vatican has long recognized the need to protect these items, particularly during the period of papal transition when the Church is in the interim period following the death of a pope and before the election of his successor. The sealing of the apartment after the death of a pope is an act of great importance. It serves to ensure that no unauthorized person enters the residence, thus protecting the sanctity of the sacred objects and preserving the privacy of papal affairs. It also prevents any unnecessary disruptions that could arise during a time of mourning, ensuring that the process of selecting a new pope remains undisturbed by external interference. This security measure is a critical part of the Vatican's larger tradition of confidentiality and respect for papal authority, which is paramount for maintaining the sanctity of the papacy. Furthermore, the sealing of the papal apartment symbolizes the temporary vacancy of papal authority, acknowledging the reality that the Church is in a period of transition. The Church enters a sede vacante period following the death of a pope, and this time of vacancy represents both a spiritual and organizational shift. The sealing of the apartment is not just a physical act, it serves as a public reminder that the papacy is currently vacant and that the Church is awaiting the election of a new pontiff. In essence, it marks the moment when the central figure of authority within the Church is no longer present, and the governance of the Church is entrusted to other officials, such as the Camerlengo, until a new pope is selected. The unsealing of the papal apartment, on the other hand, marks the restoration of continuity. When the seals are removed, it is a clear indication that the vacancy has ended and a new pontificate has begun. The new pope assumes authority, not just in a spiritual sense, but also within the administrative and functional aspects of the papacy. The act of unsealing the papal apartment signals that the Church is no longer in a transitional period and that papal authority is fully restored under the leadership of the newly elected pontiff. In this sense, the unsealing is not just a ceremonial or administrative act, it is a deeply symbolic moment in the life of the Church that reinforces the unbroken succession of papal authority. The protocols surrounding the sealing and unsealing of the papal apartment have been in place for centuries, and they serve to reinforce the Church's commitment to continuity and stability. This tradition is not merely about preserving the physical structure of the papal residence but also about preserving the broader spiritual and organizational continuity of the Catholic Church. By following these ancient protocols, the Vatican emphasizes the sacredness of the papal office and the importance of maintaining the integrity of the institution during the transition between popes. One key aspect of the unsealing ritual is that it is done in a highly ceremonial manner, often with the presence of high-ranking Vatican officials such as the Camerlengo, the Cardinal Secretary of State, and others who hold significant roles in the governance of the Church. These individuals are responsible for ensuring that the protocols surrounding the papal transition are followed to the letter, and their presence during the unsealing adds a layer of legal and ceremonial weight to the act. The unsealing is thus not only an administrative action but also a public declaration that the papacy is once again in the hands of a legitimate and elected pontiff. The act of unsealing the papal apartment is also a significant public event, visible to both those within the Vatican and to the wider world. It serves as a visible sign that the Catholic Church is continuing its mission under a new leader. The Church is not a static institution, but one that is constantly evolving, even as it holds fast to the traditions and practices that have been in place for centuries. The protocols surrounding the papal apartment are a reminder of the Church's deep connection to its history and the ongoing presence of the Holy Spirit guiding its leaders. In addition to preserving the sanctity of papal property and ensuring the continuity of papal authority, the sealing and unsealing of the papal apartment also play a crucial role in safeguarding the Vatican's reputation and credibility. By adhering to these time-honored protocols, the Church demonstrates its commitment to upholding the dignity of the papacy and ensuring that the process of papal succession is carried out with the utmost respect for tradition, confidentiality, and security. These protocols are an important part of the Church's identity and help to ensure that the papacy remains a stable and respected institution, even in the midst of transition. The sealing and unsealing of the papal apartment are deeply embedded in the ancient traditions of the Church and serve multiple critical purposes. These rituals protect the integrity of papal property, signify the temporary absence of papal authority, and restore the continuity of the papacy once the new pope is elected. They reinforce the Church's commitment to tradition and provide a visible sign of the enduring nature of papal succession. By following these protocols, the Vatican not only preserves the sanctity and security of the papacy but also ensures that the transition between popes is carried out with reverence, care, and continuity. Number 5. Witnessed by high-ranking Vatican officials. The unsealing of the papal apartment is a profound and ceremonial event that carries significant weight within the Catholic Church. It is a visible, public moment that is carefully staged and observed by key Vatican officials, ensuring that the transition between pontificates is carried out with the highest degree of legal and ceremonial propriety. The presence of these high-ranking figures adds gravitas to the occasion and reinforces the legitimacy of the new papacy. At the center of this event is the Camerlengo, one of the most pivotal roles during the sede vacanti period, or the period between the death of a pope and the election of a new one. The Camerlengo oversees the day-to-day administration of the Holy See during the transition, and one of his most important duties is the care of papal property, including the papal apartments. His role ensures that proper procedures are followed when it comes to sealing the papal residence after a pope's death and unsealing it when the new pope is elected. The Camerlengo's presence during the unsealing is essential, as it confirms the event's compliance with established Vatican protocols and highlights the Church's commitment to order and tradition. The Secretary of State, another key figure in the Vatican hierarchy, is also present to witness the unsealing. The Secretary of State is responsible for overseeing the Vatican's diplomatic and administrative functions and plays a critical role in the Church's governance. His presence lends additional legitimacy to the event, signifying the importance of the unsealing in the larger context of the Church's global mission. As the chief diplomat and administrator within the Holy See, the Secretary of State's involvement ensures that the transition of papal authority is properly recognized both within the Vatican and throughout the broader Catholic world. Other high-ranking Vatican officials, including cardinals and bishops, may also witness the unsealing. Their involvement reflects the broad consensus within the Church about the importance of the papacy as an institution and the need for a smooth, uninterrupted transition between popes. Each of these officials is part of the ecclesiastical structure that sustains the global authority of the Pope, and their presence underscores the collective responsibility the Church has in maintaining the continuity of its leadership. The witnessing of the unsealing by such high-ranking figures serves several purposes. First, it ensures that the ceremonial integrity of the transition is maintained. The unsealing is not merely an administrative or practical act. It is a symbolic event that affirms the papal authority of the new pontiff. By having the Camerlengo, the Secretary of State, and other officials present, the Vatican confirms that the event is not only conducted in a manner consistent with Church tradition but also that it is publicly acknowledged by those who hold positions of canonical authority. This public acknowledgement is vital in signaling to the faithful around the world that the transition of power has been done in full accordance with Church law and tradition. Additionally, the presence of these officials provides legal legitimacy to the new papacy. In the Catholic Church, canonical law governs the process of papal succession, and the unsealing of the papal apartment marks the moment when the Church officially recognizes the authority of the newly elected pope. The involvement of high-ranking Vatican officials in this act offers canonical validation to the new pope's election. It signifies that the transition has been done according to the laws of the Church, and that the new pontiff is now vested with the full spiritual and administrative authority of the papacy. This is essential for ensuring that the new pope's authority is unquestioned and that he is publicly acknowledged as the legitimate spiritual leader of the global Catholic community. Beyond the legal and procedural aspects, the unsealing witnessed by Vatican officials also reinforces the symbolic weight of the moment. The act of reopening the papal apartment is not just an administrative function, it is a highly charged, public statement about the continuity of the papacy. With the presence of key officials, the act is elevated to a level of solemnity and significance that underscores the sacred nature of the papal office. This event serves as a powerful reminder to Catholics around the world that the papacy is not merely the office of one individual, but an enduring institution that transcends any single pontiff. The presence of Vatican officials helps reinforce this idea, showing that the Church's leadership is a collective effort, supported by a network of high-ranking officials who work together to maintain the spiritual and administrative health of the Church. Moreover, the participation of these officials in the unsealing also has a practical function. Their presence ensures that all protocols surrounding the transition are followed, and that the papal apartment is opened in the appropriate manner. They oversee the logistics of the unsealing, ensuring that the right steps are taken to safeguard the privacy of the Pope and the integrity of the papal residence. By being involved in the process, these officials help guarantee that the Church's operations continue smoothly without any disruption during this important transition period. The unsealing of the papal apartment, witnessed by high-ranking Vatican officials, marks a turning point in the history of the Church. It is a moment when the leadership of the Church is officially transferred to the new Pope, confirming the legitimacy and authority of his pontificate. The participation of figures such as the Camerlengo and the Secretary of State ensures that the transition is done with the appropriate legal, canonical, and ceremonial dignity. This event is a visible affirmation to the world that the papacy remains steadfast in its mission, no matter the challenges that may arise during times of transition. It underscores the importance of Church unity, continuity, and the enduring nature of the papal office. The unsealing of the papal apartment is an act of profound significance, and its witness by high-ranking Vatican officials enhances both the legal and ceremonial weight of the occasion. These officials help ensure that the transition of papal authority is carried out with reverence for tradition, respect for the Church's canonical laws, and a commitment to the continuity of the papacy. Their presence highlights the collective responsibility the Vatican has in ensuring that the leadership of the Church remains strong, legitimate, and recognized by the faithful around the world. Number 6. Symbolizes the reclaiming of the papal residence. The Apostolic Palace is much more than a mere residence, it is the heart of papal governance and a place where the Pope's spiritual and administrative duties converge. Located within the Vatican, this palace is historically and symbolically crucial to the papacy, serving as the central working space for the Pope as he leads the Catholic Church. The act of unsealing the papal apartment after the death of a pope is far from an ordinary administrative procedure, it represents the reclaiming of papal authority, both spiritually and administratively, by the new pontiff. Pope Leo XIV's decision to unseal the papal apartment marks his readiness to assume the full range of responsibilities that come with the papacy. It is a public statement that the Pope is prepared to take up residence in the Apostolic Palace, which serves as both his home and his operational headquarters. This residence is central to papal duties, encompassing not only the physical space where the Pope lives but also where he works on issues ranging from theological debates to diplomatic relations and administrative decisions affecting the global Church. The unsealing symbolizes the Pope's readiness to occupy the papal throne, and by extension, his eagerness to govern the Church from the place that serves as the seat of papal authority. The papal apartment in the Apostolic Palace is more than just a personal space, it is intrinsically tied to the work of the papacy. It is here that the Pope engages with the world on theological, doctrinal, and political matters. The papacy is not just about the role of the Pope as a spiritual leader but also as a world leader, tasked with guiding over 1.3 billion Catholics and overseeing global diplomacy. The apartment, as part of the Apostolic Palace, is the central administrative hub from which the Pope makes decisions that have far-reaching consequences across the globe. This includes issuing papal encyclicals, signing documents, and meeting with heads of state, bishops, and other significant figures. The act of unsealing signifies the Pope's ability to resume these duties immediately, reaffirming his control over the administrative workings of the Church. By reopening the papal apartment, Pope Leo XIV publicly asserts that he is taking possession of this sacred space, which carries centuries of tradition and significance. The apartment, nestled within the Apostolic Palace, is where the Pope, as a spiritual and temporal leader, governs the Catholic Church. This action is not just about re-entering a physical space, it is about reclaiming his place at the helm of the Church. It symbolizes his commitment to lead with authority, continuity, and stability, continuing the work of his predecessors. As the custodian of both faith and governance, the Pope occupies this space not only for personal use but for the administration of divine and earthly matters. The reopening of the apartment also highlights the transition of power from one pope to the next. It signals that the Church is no longer in a state of limbo but is actively moving forward under the leadership of Pope Leo XIV. This continuity is essential for maintaining Church unity and ensuring that the governance of the global Catholic community continues smoothly, without disruption. The apartment serves as a reminder that despite the death of a pope, the papacy itself is an institution that endures. Its strength and stability are symbolized by the papal residence, which is constantly tied to the Church's authority and mission. The symbolic act of unsealing the papal apartment can also be seen as a reaffirmation of the Church's role in a world that is constantly changing. Throughout history, the papacy has been an anchor for Catholics in times of political upheaval, religious conflict, and personal crisis. The papal residence is where the Pope not only governs but also reflects on the Church's role in the modern world, making decisions that guide the faithful through contemporary challenges. By taking up residence in the papal apartment, Pope Leo XIV is ensuring that the Church's mission continues from the very place where it has been carried out for centuries. This also holds particular significance in an age where the Church faces numerous challenges, from secularism to issues of doctrine and modern governance. The unsealing of the papal apartment demonstrates that the Church is poised to respond to these challenges, grounded in its ancient traditions while addressing modern concerns. It symbolizes the Church's ability to evolve while maintaining continuity in its leadership. The papacy, and by extension the Apostolic Palace, has always been a symbol of spiritual authority that extends beyond the physical and into the lives of millions of people across the globe. Moreover, the papal apartment serves as a personal sanctuary for the Pope, providing him with the private space necessary to reflect, pray, and recharge. However, it is far more than just a private residence. It is a place where the Pope is constantly reminded of his unique role within the Church and the world. The process of unsealing the papal apartment underscores the multifaceted nature of papal life, blending the personal, the spiritual, and the administrative into a cohesive whole. The unsealing of the papal apartment signifies the reclaiming of papal authority in both spiritual and administrative realms. The act of reopening the residence is symbolic of the Pope's readiness to resume his central role as both a spiritual leader and administrator of the Catholic Church. The Apostolic Palace, as a hub of papal activity, is more than just a residence, it is the epicenter from which the Pope leads the Church, makes critical decisions, and engages with the world. By unsealing the papal apartment, Pope Leo XIV reaffirms his authority, continuity, and commitment to the Church's mission, ensuring that the papacy remains a strong and unbroken institution, ready to address the challenges of the present and future. Number 7. Connects to public liturgy and blessing. The timing of the unsealing of the papal apartment, immediately following the Regina Caeli prayer, serves as a profound symbol of the interconnection between the papacy's spiritual and administrative dimensions. The Regina Caeli is a Marian prayer that is recited during the Easter season, marking a key moment in the Church's liturgical calendar. This prayer, which honors the Virgin Mary, is an integral part of the Church's communal worship and reinforces themes of hope, resurrection, and divine intervention. By aligning the act of unsealing the papal apartment with this sacred liturgical moment, Pope Leo XIV underscored the significance of unity between the Pope's public spiritual role and his administrative authority. It was a clear demonstration that the papacy is not merely about managing the practical aspects of the Church's operations but is fundamentally tied to a life of prayer, devotion, and spiritual leadership. This linkage of the private act of reopening the papal apartment with a public act of worship served to remind the faithful that the governance of the Church cannot be separated from its spiritual mission. The act of unsealing the papal apartment, particularly in conjunction with the Regina Caeli, conveyed a powerful message about the inseparability of the Pope's twofold role. The Pope is not only the earthly ruler of the Catholic Church but also the spiritual leader, tasked with guiding the faithful in their relationship with God. By performing this ceremonial act in the context of prayer, Pope Leo XIV demonstrated that the leadership of the Church is rooted in faith and must always be grounded in divine guidance. The Regina Caeli prayer, which is recited by the Pope during Easter, celebrates the resurrection of Jesus Christ and calls on the intercession of the Virgin Mary. This prayer is significant because it reminds Catholics of the hope and victory over death that Christ's resurrection symbolizes. The timing of the unsealing of the papal apartment immediately after this prayer emphasizes that, just as Christ's resurrection heralded a new era of spiritual leadership for humanity, the inauguration of a new papacy signals a new chapter for the Church and its faithful. This symbolic act also reflects the Church's understanding of the papacy as a divine institution that exists to guide the faithful in both spiritual and earthly matters. The poignant juxtaposition of prayer and governance highlights that the papacy is not just about political or administrative power, but about leading with the guidance of God's will. It reinforces the notion that the Pope's authority comes from a deep connection with God and is exercised in humility, care, and devotion to the spiritual welfare of the Church. The Regina Caeli prayer itself, when recited during Easter, symbolizes renewal and hope, which ties in seamlessly with the idea of a new papacy. As the papacy transitions from one pontiff to another, it represents a renewal of the Church's mission to lead the faithful, promote peace, and spread the message of Christ's love and salvation. By linking this unsealing to such a prayerful moment, Pope Leo XIV made a clear connection between the spiritual renewal of the Church and the administrative transition within its leadership. The unsealing of the papal apartment can thus be seen as a moment of renewal, echoing the themes of the resurrection and the continual rebirth of the Church under new leadership. Furthermore, this act strengthens the public understanding of the Pope's spiritual authority. It is one thing for the Pope to be crowned or to formally assume the duties of the papacy, but it is another for him to demonstrate that his spiritual authority is rooted in faith and prayer. By timing the unsealing in conjunction with a key prayerful moment, Pope Leo XIV was showing the world that his leadership is not just about governance but is ultimately about being in service to God. The prayer was a public reaffirmation of the Pope's vow to uphold the Church's teachings and to lead in a way that reflects Christ's example of service, sacrifice, and love. Moreover, the public nature of both the Regina Caeli and the unsealing ritual emphasized the Pope's role as a visible figurehead for the Church, whose authority extends beyond the Vatican and into the hearts and minds of Catholics around the world. The ceremony was not only a private act of administration but a public demonstration of the Pope's readiness to embrace the spiritual and leadership responsibilities bestowed upon him by both the Holy See and the global Catholic community. In addition, by linking the unsealing of the papal apartment to a public liturgical act, Pope Leo XIV reaffirmed the deep tradition of the Church in maintaining continuity between its administrative practices and its spiritual mission. The Church's liturgies, sacraments, and prayers are the foundation upon which the papacy is built, and these elements cannot be separated from the Pope's earthly responsibilities. The Regina Caeli prayer serves as a living reminder of the Church's connection to the divine, reminding the faithful that the governance of the Church is not simply a human institution but is under the care of the Holy Spirit. The unsealing of the papal apartment immediately following the Regina Caeli prayer on the 11th of May was a profound act that underscored the inseparable relationship between the Pope's spiritual role and his responsibilities as the head of the Church. By timing this ceremonial act with the public liturgical moment, Pope Leo XIV not only signaled the end of the sede vacanti but also affirmed the continuity of the papacy and its connection to the universal Church. This gesture, while deeply rooted in Vatican protocol, also reflected a modern sensibility that emphasizes transparency, accessibility, and the centrality of prayer in papal governance. In doing so, Pope Leo XIV set a powerful precedent for how the papacy can embrace both tradition and contemporary engagement in guiding the faithful towards spiritual and ecclesial renewal.